Hello, and welcome back to Wellness Wednesday, a monthly series where experts share practical tips and techniques on topics that are important to patients, survivors, and caretakers alike. I'm Erin Kuhn-Krieger with the Rolf Pancreatic Cancer Foundation, and I'm so happy to be back tonight moderating the session with Rosalind Turner from Illness Navigation Resources. We'll be talking about balancing life with cancer and how to create and set boundaries. Really great information and important things to consider as we go through everyday life. But before we get to Rosalind, I want to share some details about Rolf's upcoming events. So pitchers and catchers might be reporting soon, but our eyes are on basketball, college basketball. Our competitive March Mania brackets open up on March 3rd, so you could be all set for Selection Sunday, which is on March 13th. So be sure to follow all of our social channels for the sign-up link. And if you haven't already heard, this year's Dash will once again have a together component. Dash will take place on Saturday, June 11th at Montrose Harbor in Chicago. But don't worry if you can't make it to Chicago or if you're not quite ready to be around others, we're offering virtual options as well. So save the date and more Dash details will be released soon on all of our social media channels. Did I mention you should follow us? Okay, a few housekeeping items before we get started. Don't forget that you can ask questions throughout the entire session in the comments in the chat section, or if you have a comment that is more personal, you could always email us at info@rolffoundation.org. We'll be saving all questions until the end to make sure that we could get to everybody. So Rosalind Turner is a licensed clinical social worker with Illness Navigation Resources. While her specialization is working with patients and their families dealing with a cancer diagnosis, Roz is passionate about helping all individuals facing medical challenges and more general life stressors and transitions. Welcome, Roz. We're glad to have you back.
Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you everyone for being here this evening and allowing me the opportunity to talk to you about this very important topic. As Erin mentioned, Illness Navigation Resources, we provide really just personalized services to just help navigate the complexities that any kind of medical challenge can bring. So very excited to present this topic to you all. So bear with me one second while I get all started. Okay. Balancing life with cancer, creating boundaries for patients, caregivers, and loved ones. So why is it so hard for us to set boundaries? I think universally, this is just a topic that comes up a lot because there's so many components that go into it. First and foremost, to set any kind of limit or boundary, we have this fear of disappointment. Just saying no can be really scary. We could feel really guilty about it, just really uncomfortable. We don't want to let people down, essentially. And it's also really difficult to just prioritize ourselves, right? We all have our laundry to-do list. And if you really look at it, most things on it probably have to do with doing other people, taking care of our parents or our kids or things at work or community organizations we're involved with. And maybe somewhere on the bottom is something that has to do with ourselves. And it's just kind of how we go day to day. And we don't really stop to look at what we need in that. And even when we do kind of delegate out to other people in different areas of our life, there's a little bit of control here and there where we just want it to get done in the way we want it to get done. And it will just be easier if we do it ourselves. So even when we think we're pushing out other things for people to do, ultimately somehow a lot of it kind of falls back on our plate and we just think it'll be easier that way. But in reality, it's just kind of possibly causing more stress or more things that we just don't have enough time and energy to do. But really, if you think about it, when we don't say no and we continue to just take it on and take it on, that's what really leads us to having burnout, to finding ourselves more angry, short fused, having resentment against those that are either asking us to do things or when they do ask us for one thing, we just kind of lash out because there's a whole bunch of other things we've either taken on or feel like we have to do. And we aren't feeling appreciated for what we are doing. And sometimes these, I call them the icky feelings, can lead into manifestations of physical symptoms. So if you are already going through treatment and having physical symptoms or trying to be a caregiver and just feeling really exhausted by it, a lot of that can come from just not prioritizing ourselves and thinking we can do everything. And what's really hard about setting boundaries too is that in many different arenas of our life, we want to be known as the yes person, the one that everybody can count on, the one that people can come to for things. And there is ways to still be that person, but set some limits to what it is that you take on. And in the end, all of this kind of is a problem because we just care. We care about those going through an illness. We care about our coworkers and our family, and we care about those who are caring for others. And we want to do everything we can for them. And you can still do that while kind of sticking to a lane and finding certain areas to do that and not putting it all on our plate. Because things would be different if we could just normalize setting boundaries. Our favorite person, you get a boundary and you get a boundary, right? Oprah is someone that's iconic and we kind of look to for her favorite things of everybody gets everything. And if we could do this same thing for setting boundaries and limits for ourselves and normalizing it and making it more of the routine and more habit of doing that, I think it would just be a different situation for everybody. So, first and foremost, it's kind of reframing what we think about it. And instead of boundaries as being something selfish, really setting boundaries is not about keeping people away, but it's a powerful act of self care. And it's putting ourselves front and center in the conversation to ultimately be better at everything we're doing in all the areas of our life. So, for this evening's talk, thought it would really be important to kind of hit on a couple specific areas where talking about limit setting and could be really helpful. And that would be at work, um, setting boundaries with our friends and family, and that's both for patient and caregiver. Really looking at how to limit what you take on day to day and how we can be okay with actually saying no. So, for those who are patients, first and foremost, it's important to decide what you want to share and who you want to share it with. And I put in a link for Cancer and Careers because they have some really great resources on just your rights as a person going through cancer while working, what legally is available to you. And so that's a great place to start of just what do you want people to know and how to share it with them and how to go about talking about this. And in your work life, both for patients and those caring for patients, identify what your priorities are, right? We all have like the specific deadlines of what we have to get done. But what are things that are just projects that we take on ourselves? What are things that could actually be on someone else's plate that is more their task? But going back to it's just easier for us to take it on. And kind of learning of what our actual limits are. Prior to a cancer diagnosis coming, you may have been that person that could work 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. no problem, and then still meet people for dinner or do some work on the weekends and do this and that, whatever, comes up of other things you want to do. And you may have to refocus and revisit what can you actually take on right now? What are those limits like? Maybe if I want to be able to work some, but I have to recover from treatment and my kids have stuff going on that I really want to do, there has to be a limit somewhere. And now that's different because there's a new, diagnosis with its own side effects and treatment schedule that has to go on. And to help with some of that too, there are many, many resources available to patients. FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, which helps with job protected leave, knowing what your company offers in terms of short-term disability, long-term disability. What resources does your company have? What resources are known federally? And if you are having a hard time finding that, any kind of social worker or person on your medical team can help direct you to that, as well as some of the great cancer support communities we have just in the Chicagoland area. And if you're from a different state, many states, cancer centers have that. And using your vacation and sick time, actually using it, right? So sometimes you have to use that time to do a treatment or take a loved one to treatment. But if that time's just building, sometimes you just need to take it for you, for a mental health day, for not being at work and dealing with the stressors there and not being a patient and not being a caregiver or loved one taking care of a patient, but just getting to be one day and really making sure to use that time for yourself. Now, cancer affects everybody, not only the patient and the family and friends, like it really is just all around. And when you are the patient, everyone wants to help you, right? You can have 15 people asking you if they can bring you a meal. You can have 10 people offering to give you a ride. And it's wonderful to have that kind of support. And it's important to remember you're in charge, right? People will take their lead from you. This is a great time for you and a chance for you to take control, and because there's so many areas where you can't, and dictate, what do I want, what do I need. And the next point is designating people for certain tasks. It could be really overwhelming to have someone come to you. I want to drive you, I want to get you food, I want to do this, and have 15 people coming at you at the same time. Or maybe it's just one person coming to you and saying, I want to help, if you have a smaller support network. And so finding out, how is the best way this person can help me, and kind of designating that so people can feel really empowered, and that could help them set their limits. So someone's not doing the ride and getting the food and going shopping for you, but this person does that, this person does this. Or if it's, I really love to cook, I don't want any food, but a ride would be really helpful. Or I'm actually feeling really good. I'm able to drive myself to treatment and I'm cooking myself dinner. And sometimes I could really use just like a card with some like empowering words, or maybe some new books to read. Finding out for you what will really be the most supportive. And that does go for caregivers too, and family members. And what is the role you feel most comfortable in, right? Are you going to be the person who can sit with the really heavy emotions when that person needs that, to support and to lean on? Are you the fun, I can distract you, we don't have to talk about this, we're going to go out and do this, or we're going to have a funny phone call, or we can watch a movie together? Are you the person who's very task oriented? Like, I'm good with going to the grocery store, I'm good with cooking a meal, I'm good with, driving to and from. Only you know your strengths. And the more that you can really lean into that and kind of know what your lane is, again, that's you setting a boundary of what's the best. So you don't become emotionally exhausted. You don't find yourself in an area that you might feel uncomfortable in. And that patient can know how to count on you, and vice versa. You as the patient know who you're going to for stuff. So just with organization, with knowing what you need, knowing what you can provide, setting those limits and having communication around that is wonderful, because the communication is another tough piece. In our day and age, we have 17 ways in which you can ask someone how they're doing. You can text them, email them, call them, WhatsApp them, on social media. And having to do all of that for multiple people is really difficult. So I sometimes, say to patients, who do you want to elect as your press secretary? Right? Sometimes you want it to be you. The act of writing down, the updates from the doctor, this is what happened today, and sending that out is really therapeutic, and that's wonderful. And for other people, it's, I've been talking all day, I've had to answer so many questions, I don't want to talk. And so it's kind of setting this rhythm, like on my treatment days, I'm not going to reach out to anybody. And then I don't feel good for 2 days. So on the third or fourth day, that's when I'll be communicative. Or I'm not the one to talk to you about things. So and so is, and so will speak for me, and so will know. So you're sharing it with one person. There's no right or wrong way, but it's just important to know what way works the best for you. And that goes again for anybody involved in dealing with a cancer diagnosis. And along the lines of communication, sometimes you just want to talk about the weather. So for us in the last 2 years of the pandemic, I'm sure so many of us, every conversation back to back was COVID this and COVID that, and how are you doing in COVID, and what are you doing during quarantine? And we were getting a lot of fatigue from that. Well, that's something that cancer patients have always had to deal with. How's your cancer? How's your treatment? What are the doctors saying? How's it going? And it's met with so much good intention, but it gets tiring, right? Because as I mentioned before, you're not just a person going through cancer, or you're not just a person caring for someone who has cancer, but you're also a spouse, a partner, a child, a parent, a PTA member, a soccer coach, a CEO, a teacher, a dancer. There's so many parts about you that once cancer comes into the picture, they kind of fall by the wayside. And we forget to just ask, how are you doing? How are your kids? How's your family? Have you gone to any restaurants? Have you seen any new movies? I just read this great book. What do you think about that? Bring that normalcy in. Start talking about that. It's okay to set that boundary that you don't want to talk about cancer. You don't want it to be about cancer. Doesn't mean it's ongoing, but just for those certain times, or these are the people I don't talk about cancer with. We talk about everything else, and these are the people I do talk about my cancer with. Whatever way you choose to have it be is the right way, and setting that limit and setting that boundary is the most healthy thing that you can do for yourself, and it kind of opens the doors to all of these productive interactions you can have moving forward. So how do we limit what we take on? And I first start with patience in this, in that just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? You got your treatment, you know what days you don't feel good, you know what days you do feel good. And it's very common that on the days you do feel good, you want to go and do everything that you're not able to when you're not feeling good. The problem with that is that you can run out of that energy really quickly and only exacerbate things to come, right? Your time and your energy is really precious. And someone along the way of my career so far shared this with me. And so I love, passing it on, that you now have to think of your energy and your time the same exact way that you think of your bank account. You have X amount of dollars, and you know that you have to budget that on your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, your loans, your entertainment, your savings. Your time and energy is the exact same way, right? You want to be able to work, you want to be able to go to your kid's game, you possibly want to travel for this important thing coming up, you have this. There's no possible way to give 100% time and energy to all of those things. And so you have to limit that. And you have to limit that both physically and emotionally, right? You can't be at every place at once. You might want to be really active and work out and go to work and go to your treatment and go to this. And kind of recognizing that limits have to be put in place is the first step. And it's hard. There's a lot of grief that goes into that because you want everything to be just as normal as it was before, but things are different. And the best way to just accept that is to then look at that and decide and prioritize, where do I want to be, what needs my most attention, what needs most of my time, and how do I set these boundaries and put these limits in place to ultimately just make this the best experience for myself. And we don't do it enough, but we all need to stop for a minute and look into ourselves and say, what do I need? What do I want? What do I actually have to do? And how do I use my network? How do I use my resources? And how do I set those limits to best accommodate all of the answers for those things? Now, the other hard part is, how do you actually say no, right? We're talking about doing it, and we've acknowledged that it's really hard and it's really scary, but we've also acknowledged that it's probably really the best thing for us. And I think first and foremost, we think that when we say no, we're being selfish. And that's where we need to start with reframing that thinking. Saying no is not selfish. Saying no is self-care. Saying no is one of the most important things you can do for yourself when you're going through a hard, stressful time like a cancer diagnosis. And when you think about it, right, we always try to prioritize everything about, I have to exercise and I have to watch my diet. Why don't we say I have to say no more? It's the same thing. It's a lifestyle change, and it's a lifestyle change that benefits us. So it really just starts with changing our thinking around it. And once we start to say no, and once we start to put in limits of kind of, this is my role, this is what I do, this is how I do it, this is what I need, and this is what I want, and having people really react to that, you start to feel more respected. Your viewpoints and what you're saying is very valued. And communicating what you need, you start feeling more appreciated, right? Especially for those caregivers out there that are kind of acknowledging, well, this is what I do really well, and this is how I could be there for you. And then knowing that these people in your life are going to do these things. These are the people that are going to do those things. You can then be more appreciated for what you're doing and not always feeling like you're not doing enough or you're doing everything. And then when more and more comes on your plate and you just can't get to it, that's again where that anger and resentment and frustration starts coming in versus limiting it from the beginning and having everybody on the same page and communicating about it. It can just create such great interpersonal reactions with everybody involved in the situation. I know it's really hard, but our role is not to make sure that everyone is okay and not to make sure we're disappointing people. We may disappoint someone by really putting ourselves first, but trying to manage everybody else's emotions around it just can become exhausting. And there's not enough time in the day to deal with all of those emotions and our own emotions and really really looking inward of like our role is to just first and foremost put myself first, and in doing that I can be a better version to help people in the way that's most beneficial for me and most beneficial for them. But how do we do this? How do we actually have those conversations? Right? So for example, you're at work and you want to be the yes person. You want to be the coworker that's known that everybody can come to you and you can go and help them. First and foremost, we run the risk of kind of, oh, I can put that to so and so. They will always do it, even if it's maybe not something that's in your scope or to do. And to just really stop and say, I'd love to do that, but noting like I'm really overcommitted right now. It's something that I want to do, but I just don't think I can give it the attention it deserves right now. Can you circle back with me? Or, I can't really do that this month, but check with me next month. I have a couple other things that are falling off my plate I'll be able to do. And even just saying, the as much as I'd love to do that and help you out, the best thing for me right now is to say no, but I definitely want to be available another time once I get through this. Or when you're the patient and people are like, oh, come out and just come eat with us. It'll be really good. You have to get out and do this. Just appreciating, like, I love that you're asking me. It means so much. Like, thank you for including me. I'm going to have to sit this one out, as much as I'm like feeling okay and feeling good right now. I know that giving myself some more time and energy will really be the best thing for me. And so let's, circle back. Let's try again. Like, let's do this later at a different date. Um, I think it'll be really respected and appreciated that you are being vulnerable and honest and explaining why. And it's not necessarily having to give excuses, right? When we're worried about it, we kind of throw out like, oh, I'm really busy and I have to do this and I have to go there and we start over explaining. And then that just maybe kind of looks like, well, they just don't want to. And it can kind of get down the rabbit hole of some of those like fears and worries about being disappointed, but just kind of simply stating, I'm overcommitted. The best thing for me is no. I'd really love to. Thank you for asking me. It's really caring and compassionate communication. And it just would be a really good dialogue back and forth and just everybody feeling heard and respected all around. So those are some tactics to help with saying no. Again, it's not a change that happens overnight. It happens in the long run, but just ways to start thinking about it. So I recently found this as I was talking about boundaries and limits, and it's an alternate ending to the story, The Giving Tree. So I think most people will be familiar, but if you're not, it's a story about a little boy and a tree and how this tree is very giving to the little boy throughout all the different eras of his life. And I think many people will take away different things from it, but it's a great example of just to a certain point, when you give and give so much, you're going to be left at a certain point where there's truly nothing more to give. So if you haven't read The Giving Tree, go and read the original version. But I'm going to share, this is from Topher Payne. I found this on social media, and it really just spoke to me. And I hope it kind of helps give a visual of setting boundaries. So I'm going to go ahead and read it for you all. As each generation played in her strong old branches, the tree often thought back to the fateful day when the boy had asked her for a house. In truth, she would have gladly given him her branches to build one. She would have given him her trunk to build a boat. She loved him that much. But then she would have had nothing left, not for herself, nor anyone else. There never would have been a home for the red squirrels. There'd have been no hide and seek with the boys' grandchildren, no bakery with the best apple pies anyone ever tasted. Setting healthy boundaries is a very important part of giving. It assures you'll always have something left to give. And so the tree was happy. Everyone was. And I really loved coming across this because it elaborated more why, yes, giving could have done all of those wonderful things for the boy. But in not doing that, it also opened up all these other possibilities of how just saying no did all of these great things, a home for squirrels and hide and go seek with the family and pies for everybody else to enjoy. And I think it's really important to think about that for ourselves, right? So we think in saying no, we're just upsetting one person and that's the end of it. But really, we're opening up the possibility to save energy for ourselves, to feel really healthy in what we're doing, to be available not only for that one person or for that coworker, or for that job or for that family member, but the greater of the situation when dealing with cancer, because there is so much going on. There's so much emotion around it. And in the end, we're all trying to do good. We're trying to help. We're trying to be supportive. We're trying to get through it. And if we could just start thinking about setting boundaries as being very important self-care, being okay with saying no, knowing that setting limits is healthy to do and we all should be doing it, and we should have, Oprah on our shoulder giving everybody boundaries. It'll just help make some of these tough situations a little bit easier. So I thank you all, and I really welcome any questions that could be a little bit more specific, and we could talk a lot more through it. So Erin, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so interesting. And there's so many questions I have. I'm going to start with the ones that are coming in. How about that?
Love it.
Okay, so for the first one is, what if I've always been the go-to person and everyone around me is falling apart? How do I make sure they're okay if I say no to things that they might need?
Yeah. And sometimes it's kind of working together instead of you doing it for them. How do you help brainstorm other ways that they can get that support? Who are the other people in their lives? What are the resources they need for that? Is it something at work? Is it something with cancer from their medical system? Are there other family members or friends around for them to turn to in that time? So you can still support them by putting in that limit that maybe you're not exactly the one to do X, Y, and Z that they need, but really kind of take it as a brainstorming session and helping them empower and help themselves by thinking more about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even going as far as creating a spreadsheet with a name and what somebody is, the areas that they're good at. That might be another idea.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of people who kind of organize everything like that. And there's actually a lot of, sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but for those going through diagnosis, there are many like Meal Train and other kind of websites that help organize who's going to do what, who's going to drive this person, who's going to bring a meal, who's going to. So if it's not some person of, I always say like your support squad, there are actual like websites online that can help you stay organized with that.
Yeah, because delegating the tasks in itself can be overwhelming. We actually had a question about that, that people have talked about Caring Bridge and Meal Train, and I know there's Give in Kind. What other platforms are there that you recommend, or are those like
those
ones
are kind of some of the top ones
okay.
I was going to go to. Definitely there's Meal Train, Caring Bridge. There are a couple others that I definitely don't know off the top of my head, but I think this is another great example that wherever it is you might be treated, your medical team, or you may even have a social worker on your team, often has a lot of these resources just like already on a piece of paper to give you. So these would be great things to ask them for, because they'll be able to share that with you.
Sure. So if you're bad at setting boundaries, are there books that you would recommend to help ease people into the mindset? I know like Brené Brown and James Clear and Glennon Doyle, but everybody, I could go off on quotes from each of those folks.
Yeah, Brené Brown is going to be my number one to go to for sure. I know this is going to sound weird too, but I kind of like the alternate ending for Giving Tree. I came across that on Instagram. I phone must have been listening to me. I was talking about boundaries and it popped up, but then I kind of took it a different way and I kind of started searching for it myself. And I also put in setting boundaries just into Google for I'm a very visual person. And so kind of a lot of those quotes I put in there have just been really helpful. I've printed a lot out for patients. I've put some up at my desk at work, in fact, too, to just kind of have there because sometimes we don't stop enough
Right.
to not even to set the boundary, but to stop to think about how am I? Where am I? Let me do a self check. What am I doing too much of? What am I not doing enough of? And so sometimes having those visuals just around, I've talked with patients about putting actually putting a picture of a stop sign somewhere obscure. Like I had one patient who a corner of her closet caught her eye every time she went from her bathroom to her bedroom. So that would be her morning routine or nighttime routine. And she would see the stop sign. It would help her just stop and do a quick check-in with herself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to kind of set, like just this mantra of how am I? What do I need? What do I want? And how can I help myself get that? And so aside from like Brené Brown and some of the ones you've mentioned, it is so silly as it is, kind of going on YouTube about boundaries and can find a lot of talks there, social media, internet to get great things. Some things are questionable, always take it with a grain of salt, but it's a good way to find a lot of stuff. It really is.
Definitely. So the next one is, what if you're in the middle between loved ones that are fighting to take the lead on helping you? They said, I try to elevate their issues with each other by just doing it myself. How do I have them work it out without me, without feeling bad?
So let me see if I just want to make sure I understand this. So there's two, so you like that person's the patient and there's two loved ones fighting about helping them.
Correct. That's what it looks like. Yep.
You know, uh, I think this kind of goes back to saying, this is what I need. And be like, I don't need the fighting. I don't need this. How about you do that and you do this? And it might be taking it into your own hands and just making that decision for them
Sure.
and seeing of what it is they can or can't do, or asking like, are you able to do this? And are you able to do that? Or is it, what, maybe it's easier if both of you don't do this. And is there another resource that can to take that away from them? So it is hard because you're tired, you're exhausted, and I get you don't want to do that. And so we leave it to their family. But then is there someone else who can be the one to kind of referee between them? Or is it kind of taking that power and being like, this, I appreciate that you want to do this and this, but I actually just need that and that. And that would be the most helpful.
Let's talk guilt. It runs deep. So
Okay.
what's your top tip for how to deal with the guilt of saying no?
Somehow knowing that the reason for it is best, and that you can feel guilty, but no one else is going to prioritize and advocate for you and be there for you and to do it. And so why should you have to take on the brunt and exhaust yourself and risk burnout for someone else? Because if someone else isn't going to do that for you, why are you going to continuously to do it for them? And living with it a little bit has to happen, and it feels really uncomfortable. But when you start getting past that and realize how good it feels to have more time, or to know you set that limit, or could be a possible teaching moment for them, it could really benefit out. But somehow trying to think about how prioritizing yourself because no one else is going to wins above all. And it does take a while to kind of get through that. And even talking about that with someone, honestly, for those going through cancer, there are wonderful free cancer resources at many of the different cancer communities in the Chicagoland area, or be it if you live somewhere else, or mental health resources that you can get from your treatment team. It's not something you have to go through, but kind of having, if we could do one of these every week and talk about normalizing it and validating it, even that helps a little bit of just feeling validated for what it is you're going through and having someone to be there with you to talk through it. And it doesn't have to be kind of an ongoing thing. It could be for that specific stressor or life event that's going on, but utilizing resources like that to just kind of help you cope and get through it.
Yeah, I think that's just great. That's really important. Our next question is, how can I communicate in a nice way that I really don't like being treated as a cancer patient? I want to decide what I believe I can do versus what I can pass on. And this person is saying, it's work related, but I think if we could address it, sorry, setting boundaries here. If we could address it from both the work and the personal side of things, I almost look at it as, the Richard head tilt from Friends, how you doing? Like when they were talking like that. So can you address that?
Yes, I call it the pivot, right? So, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Like, how are you? How's the family? Like, what's going on? And pivoting. And sometimes you have to pivot more than once, honestly, because I'll be like, no, but really, like, how are you? Be like, I really appreciate you asking. Like, I actually like don't have to talk about it. I'm feeling really good. I'm able to do this. And actually, like, can you maybe help me with this thing? I have this going on. And the pivot really helps. Sometimes people really don't get the hint. And depending on how comfortable you feel or how vulnerable you are, thanking people for wanting to be so supportive and wanting to be there and saying, the thing I really need the most is kind of having a conversation that has nothing to do with my cancer and really looking at me as your coworker, as your friend, as whatever it may be. So it kind of just depends on like what your comfort level is in addressing it that way. Um, and knowing and preparing for the situation you might be going into. So in work, you may have that colleague that knows, and it's kind of like, oh well, I can do this for you, or don't worry, I know you have a lot on your plate and you can do it, and be like, what, there is totally a lot on my plate, but luckily I've been able to like delegate this off because this is a project I really want to work on, and I have a lot of energy to do it, and it's really really good, and I'll be sure to let you know if I need any help or support, or if there's something that changes and I can't get to it, or why don't let's make sure to be in communication around this and touch base. Like, I'm going to start this and hand off, and I really think that I'll be able to get it and hit that deadline, but if for any reason I can't, I'll let you know. And it's empowering for you, and then it's empowering for the person to see like, oh okay, like she's got that, that's great. And at the end of the day, we can only control what we do, and it's hard because we can't always control how someone else is going to be, because they're coming at it from a different experience. They might know what's going on and bring from them past things they've had, or other things that's happened with loved ones. And so everything is a teachable moment. So it's being really patient and understanding and accepting like they are coming with a good intention, and I don't know the background they're necessarily coming with, but if I can be this new example for them, if I can show them that actually I can work full time and be going through this and doing this, because why? I'm setting good limits for myself. I'm knowing what I can do and what I can't do, and let me tell you about that, let me teach you about that, and maybe that could be something you could really do too. And so it could really just be really more engaging and able to kind of be something that you have to work through with someone.
I love the idea of the pivot. I mean, I think that that's going to be so, you could use that across so many different levels. I'm going to get to the next question so I can mute myself. After treatment, others think you're all healed with lots of energy. I ran it by my doc, and he told my daughter, no, the doc said I can't make any babysitting commitments right now. So what do you do when people think like everything, you've gone through treatment, you look great, everything's fine, when things aren't necessarily fine?
Yeah, this is so common. Let me tell you, you are not alone. On a weekly basis, I talk to patients about this, and a lot of it is almost having to have family meetings, bring in family to talk about that, because you're right. It's, oh, you're done now. You can go back to being the person you were the day before you ever got your diagnosis. And nothing could be further from the truth. But unless you're really intimate in the cancer experience and what happens, you're not going to know that, and I think it's partly just not having the education of understanding that the treatment you go through, any part of it, just surgery, just chemo, just radiation, all of it combined, has lasting effects. It is cumulative. Um, and so there's that lack of education there. And then it's people kind of just wanting to be hopeful, wanting to be like, oh, you're good now, we can go, because it's a little bit of their fear talking. And the more that you can be okay, the more that they know that they can be okay. And it reminds me of a story that I don't want to get into stories, but I do want to share this one. I had a patient who had many rounds of chemo, many rounds of radiation. And it was extremely fatiguing. And we talked about that for months and months after their treatment. And one day came to me and said, I went to Navy Pier and I was really tired after. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, no, no, no. I wasn't like treatment tired. I was like tired from life. Like the treatment tired ended. But we're talking 9 months after, and there were still some remnants of the treatment, but this was like a new tired. And it was really exciting to kind of feel that, but it was helped to validate and normalize that it's okay for months and months after, you're still going to have some of those treatment side effects. And it is helpful to have doctors explain that to family members. Helpful to have your social worker talk about how that could be okay. Again, these like cancer support communities like Rolf and other places that have people who can help talk about that, and find ways of like, what else does that mean? And what, again, talking to you, like, what do you want and what do you need as you are in your survivorship and continue to rest and regain your strength, right? Because you don't want to go so much as like, oh, well, you're still recovering. We're not going to like ask you to join us for things and we're not going to have you do things. But, oh, you're done with treatment. Like, come, you can run with me, you can work with me, you can come and do this. It's somewhere on the spectrum. And that again is really where that communication of, I'm feeling really okay today, but I might not be really okay tomorrow. And just having it be an open topic that you can continue. And it's an ever-changing thing and it's always evolving. And just being open about it and kind of getting some more psychoeducation for, you and your family, and just knowing that you are not alone and that it's completely normal and okay.
Yeah, I imagine the balance of being in treatment and the cycle of in between, and when you do feel typical, that there's this hope, which leads us into our next question. What about the fear? How do you balance things in life with the fear of reoccurrence, or that something's going to happen or something else?
Yeah, that is a hard one, right? Because no matter what people can tell you or what it is, you'll always have that, and it's a little bit of the scanxiety, right? You're kind of good scan to scan. And then when it comes up, everything kind of gets activated a little bit. And so there's a lot of different things. So again, I keep kind of going back to these resources because there's so many different things out there. But like for instance, Living Well is a cancer support community that is connected with Northwestern. They're out in Geneva, I believe. They actually just started a scanxiety support group. And there's other like specific support groups that are fear of recurrence or living with the unknown. That's the hardest part, is just this unknown piece. And what you kind of have to ask yourself is, how am I thinking right now? Right. So I like to liken things to a fork in the road, because I think you often have definitely more than two choices, but at least two choices, right? You can choose to live in the fear and the anxiety and have it affect everything you do moving forward, right? Oh, I'm not going to do this, or I can't do that because I'm thinking about this, and I can't do this because I'm thinking about that. Or you can go cautiously and continue to enjoy every day, because the next is unknown. There is that unknown there. You just don't. So despite what happens, let's say you're going scan to scan and everything's good, you're going to look back and say, man, the last 3 months I spent just being like so anxious and worried. I didn't get to like enjoy myself. I didn't get to engage with my family or my work. I didn't get to try this new thing because I was worried, and everything's okay. And then kind of takes you to the next one of, what can you do in between those times? And then when those times come up, when it's really bad, turning to those resources. Is it social work? Is it mental health resources? Is it support groups? Is it one-on-one peer support? Is it just specific lectures and webinars kind of like this that kind of hit on, it's okay and it's going to be there? And at the beginning, it might be there a little bit stronger, but even as you're out years and years, there's still going to be these times of the what if.
Sure.
And the what if is normal. And depending on how it's affecting your functioning, right? Is it, let me try a little meditation right now. Let me try to do some breathing exercises, going for a walk for my friends, and like remembering like how far I've come since treatment. And it was all because I have this wonderful life I'm living and I want to be engaged in it and I want to be present for it. And so thinking about the what if and the unknown, it needs to be there. It definitely needs to be processed and acknowledged. But then that's kind of where you wrap it up and kind of compartmentalize it here for the day you need to bring it back and kind of focus on it again. But after you kind of give it some time and space, put it back in and be able to kind of go in and enjoy this life and this time that you fought so hard for, or cared for and supported that one that fought so hard for.
For sure. So the next question is, as a caregiver, it's difficult to set boundaries when there's this fear that every minute away from the loved one is lost time, that there's a feeling of guilt of not being with them. And yet being with them all the time, takes away from other things. So what would you say is the best way to manage that?
Yeah. I want to validate that. I mean, that's really tough, right? Because it gives you a sense of control to know that you can be there every moment. You can do every single thing. And that's one way to cope. It definitely is. And a lot of people will say that, do everything you can do. But only you yourself can see, how is this dragging on me? Like, how is this making me feel? Am I actually tired? Am I actually, and is the time we're spending together even quality, right? I'm there doing everything, but are we fighting? Are we bickering? Am I feeling appreciated? Are they feeling heard? Right? Kind of some of the stuff that was talked about tonight. And it's looking at how is the time I'm spending and how am I caregiving, and also making that quality time, because it's not just about being the one to do everything for that person, but it's also having those enjoyable moments, kind of when we were talking about, like, just talk about the weather, right? And in that too, if you get to kind of go off and have a couple moments of going shopping or walking through the grocery store or being able to have dinner with a friend, then you get to come back to that loved one and it gives you more stuff to talk about that's not about the cancer. Yeah, I saw so and so and we did this, or I went and got a massage and it was so great and I feel super energetic now. Like, what can I do for you? I feel really great. And then that loved one is gonna, because also you have to think about it too, that knowing that if if you are the patient, knowing that someone is taking care of you, almost 24/7, they start building up a little bit of guilt and feeling bad that you're not going on and living your life. So to give them the peace of mind of that you're doing incredible stuff for me and you're getting moments to take care of yourself, right? This is kind of like the tree example of, like, look at the bigger picture of how it's having such a positive impact, that you're not only filling up your energy tank, but you're also kind of giving that person that you're caring for some kind of rest and respite, and knowing that you're okay too. And that there's very little things sometimes that a patient can do because they have so much going on and they're kind of the center of it, that to know that they've given you a break, they've given you the time, you're allowing them to be helpful and useful to you.
Sure.
So it really is such a, circular, wonderful thing to do all around.
Absolutely. I think, it gives a sense of normalcy for those who don't want to always be seen as the cancer patient or as the cancer caregiver, to be able to have this balance where things are just fine, even for a movie moment or a dinner or something. Why do you think when it comes to saying no, that we're so willing to disappoint ourselves by saying yes and not disappoint, like, we're more worried about disappointing others by saying no than by disappointing ourselves in doing so?
Because we know how we're living with our own disappointment, right? We can control those kinds of negative things. And sometimes we don't want to, it when we're doing for others, we're not processing our own emotions because you kind of can't do the same. So it's actually a great, like, deflection coping mechanism of, if I'm making sure they're okay and I'm running here and I'm doing this, then I don't have to sit with, how is this actually affecting me? I don't have to think about even being a patient. Sometimes when you're a patient, you want to go and do other things because you don't want to think about your own diagnosis. As the caregiver, you don't want to think about what this means. And so you get to stay busy and do action because it deflects the actual emotion. And that's a much easier thing to kind of handle in being disappointed. Whereas when we put ourselves first and think about ourselves, it's scary because we have to focus on that. And then on top of that, we're worried about how someone else is going to be. So it's just, nope, easier. I'm going to go and do that. So there's really two things at play here, honestly. And by no means is it easy. But if you kind of just start having the conversation with yourself of what that even looks like, to put yourself first, to ask yourself what you need and want, and just take really little baby steps. and one little thing here and there. Because then as you start becoming more comfortable with it and seeing, oh, I said no to that person and it was okay. They understood. They're like, oh my gosh, you're so right. I should do more of that. I bet you if you say that to someone in that capacity with that compassion of, I'm just like super overcommitted right now. And I know it's the best thing for me to just stay home and not go out. How many times do we hear, you're so right. I should just do that too. But we're all so afraid. So it's kind of like if one person starts the chain, it may kind of trickle down. And again, could be really empowering and sharing and help motivate others to take your lead.
Absolutely. And I think that's so applicable for everyday life, regardless of if you're a patient, if you're a caregiver, if you're alive, then you need to do this. And I think it's huge. And, we've had a lot of great questions come in tonight, and we've had such great information from you. What would you say are your top 3 takeaways that you want people to walk away with tonight?
I really want everybody to put this mantra that boundaries, limits, saying no is not selfish, it's self-care, right? If we start removing that word from our vocabulary of it, this is our self-care. This is our Peloton routine. This is our, healthy salad. This is me saying no and knowing what I can and can't do. Definitely self-care. Secondly, is that how empowered you can feel by identifying what you need, identifying what you want, and communicating that. And just feeling heard, feeling respected, feeling appreciated. All of those positive things only continue to give energy so that you can give more in the lanes that you've set those limits in. So setting boundaries actually allows you to be even more helpful in the right ways. So just that empowerment. And just lastly, I guess setting healthy boundaries and setting healthy limits is ultimately going to make you the best version of yourself you can be so that you can be better in all those areas you have to be, in the caregiver, in the patient, in the person at work, in your family, with your friends, wherever your time and energy is needed. Being organized about it and having, your lanes of where you can do it in, will just make it kind of hopefully go a little bit more seamless and just having a better positive feeling with it instead of just taking it all on because you can and sometimes you want to and sometimes you're forced to, and then those feelings of anger and resentment and even more guilt and knowing then you get snippy and short, and just a lot of that starts with just setting the boundary to begin with.
For sure. Well, Roz, thank you so much for joining us again tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. You always bring such great information and in such a relaxed style that makes everything doable. So I greatly appreciate you being here. We're going to put your contact information in the chat. So if you want to reach out to Roz, you are able to. I see it's in there right now. And I wanted to thank everyone for joining us for tonight and sharing your questions. Each one of them were so important. And if you're watching this on replay, be sure to write replay in the comments and ask your questions so that we can go to Roz with them and then get back to you with those answers. Next month, we are coming to you on Wednesday, March 16th, and we're going to be talking about living with cancer with a focus on pain and sleep management strategies. Who among us does not or could not use better sleep? We're working with Alyssa Vandenberg, a clinical health psychologist at Northwestern Medicine and a postdoctoral fellow at the Robert H. Lurie Comprehensive Cancer Center of Northwestern University. So keep an eye out for details on that. And if you have ideas for future Wellness Wednesday topics and speakers, you could always email us at info@ralphfoundation.org. On behalf of everyone at the Ralph Pancreatic Cancer Foundation, thank you for joining us tonight. And until next time, stay healthy and take good care. Good night.